Hey, I'm at the northern end of Schoharie Village. This is where we begin our Village of Schoharie Foxestown walking tour. And some of the highlights here begin with the landscape, which is Terrace Mountain. We can talk about some early Mohawk village sites and other occupation sites that date back to prehistoric times. And also we talk a bit about George Mann and the Mann family. Tory Tavern Restaurant is in the background there. We talk about that, whether or not that's the original structure. But certainly the Mann family and George Mann's defection during the Revolution to the British cause. Also, we cross this pretty little bridge here. It's a very aesthetic tour. And also the Colonel Peter Vroman house. This is post-war home. We'll talk about the history there and whether or not it's an actual house from the 1785. So this is where we begin. This Foxestown walking tour goes through one of the most historic areas in the county for many, many reasons, not just because we're in the vicinity of the old stone fort. You have the oldest section of the cemetery here for the Dutch Reformed. We have the old stone fort, which of course was built in 1772. But just as importantly, on the tour, we will walk the half-acre stockade, looking at the different features in it. Certainly talk about the Johnson raid of 1780, and also a history of the fort. As we sit now, the fort is not open. But it doesn't mean that history can't continue to be presented here, and that is what we will do. And down the road, not far from here, is where we would turn around, and that's at what is now called Swartz Tavern, a home that was built in 1772. Go over the history of that, the architecture, of course, of that building and the stone fort, and other buildings that are on this tour. And we'll find out at Swartz Tavern if it was known as Swartz Tavern during the war and who actually built it. But also, we're not going to so much talk about the buildings here that are associated with the Stone Fort Museum, except maybe the Dutch Barn and the Hartmannsdorf House, which date back to the colonial period. But also out in the field, we talk about the earliest churches of the Dutch Reformed and also Lutheran. Where they might have been, also the King's Highway, and some other features. A lot of history in this little corner. Expect to find architecture, Revolutionary War history, some Civil War history, and also a little history on the Schoharie County Historical Society.